Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and today we're going to be talking about plant care, and specifically the 6 macronutrients plants need. Generally, most growers know that plants have 3 macronutrients, and those are your NPK, or your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. I'm going to show you a product label in just a minute, but plants need so much more than that, and if they're just missing one, the plant will not reach its genetic potential. And our goal with each growing season is to get our plants to become and grow as healthy as possible and get to a height, especially when it's your fruit trees, to produce as many flowers, which ultimately lead to as many fruit, and just having some really good quality growing plants. I just was applying some of the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard to the stems here, and just making sure that we had nice protection, against the coat to prevent sunburn, which is, pretty harmful on these young planted trees. Additionally, there's one of our customers that complained about the squirrels being attracted to the avocado because of the nut. As you can see, this is the avocado seed that was planted as a seedling and then grafted at this point over here with the variety and the flavor of the avocado, which on this one specifically is the Pinkerton avocado. Let me point over here. It says Pinkerton avocado, and it says it's a tasty edible fruit, ideal fresh eating, heavy producer, ripens October to January. And the reason I planted this is, there's a lot of publications out there saying that the Pinkerton can tolerate shade more so than some other varieties and still be quite tasty, delicious, up there with the Hass avocado. And just a very heavy producer, even maybe more so than the Hass avocado. So that's kind of what attracted me to the Pinkerton variety. But I do have the Hass and the Fuerte avocado, which I'm gonna share with you in just a minute. I pruned up here a branch that was not performing as well. So I'm also gonna coat that real quick with the Ivory Organics product as well. And let me just quickly just show you the product and how it comes and the benefits it can serve your plants. So I'm just making sure I got a nice coat right there. So here's the products. If we take a look over here, it's Ivory Organics, a 3-in-1 plant guard, and it's protection against damaging sunburn and insects and rodents, and it's registered material for use in organic agriculture. And on the back here, I just want to share real quick, it could be used as a brush on, it could be used as a foliar spray, as well as a tree paste. And it's got these 7 oils in here, which are castor oil, cinnamon, clove, cedarwood, garlic, rosemary, and peppermint, which when applied to the plant, as I explained just earlier, the nut at the bottom, for example, was a problem with squirrels in one particular garden, but it helps protect your plant against other rodents as well, whether they be mice, rabbits, whatever else that may attempt to girdle the tree. And it's usually in the winter. It's more of a winter phenomenon. When the rodents are hungry, they'll be attracted to gnaw on the tree to get to the saps, to get to the sugars, and basically keep those rodents through the winter. So girdling is one thing. The oils in it will offer a defense against insects. And then the whitewash phenomenon, which is where we're painting the tree trunks and lower branches, is to prevent sunburn, which is also damaging to the plant as well. What you can also do, and since we planted it, it's produced all of these new leaves, and we're gonna be, in a week with mid 80s, but this is more important when you get into the 90s and 100s. But you can also spray the leaves, and let's see if some of the older leaves still have some of the protection. You may be able to see it if you come in a little closer, and I'll try to get out of the light. You may be able to see that there's still some faint Ivory Organic that's on there, still offering the protection, but this is a leaf from last year. And the rest of the leaves have since fallen, and I'm gonna explain to you how dramatic that is. As you can see down here, so this year it fell off when I pruned it, but you can see that there's some leaves that have since fallen off the plant, but the phenomenon is a lot greater on my more established Fuerte and Hass avocado, which I'm gonna share in just a minute. But we're gonna shake this up over here. And again, we're using the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard as a ready-to-use spray. And we're just gonna cool the plant off like so. And now we've got an organic foliar spray to help keep these plants cool so that they don't burn during the hottest summer days. And again, we're now at the late April, so this will protect your leaves that have been now coated through the entire summer. So it'll offer at least 6 to 9 months of protection just with what we did right now. With the newer leaves, if it puts out some more growth, which it should, through the summer months, you can continue to spray it and offer protection that way. Let's quickly take a look at what's happening with the Hass and the Fuerte avocado, like I said, in regards to leaf drop. Check this out. So here we are now in the under canopy of the Hass avocado. This Hass avocado was only about a foot and definitely less than 2 feet taller than that Pinkerton avocado, and this was installed about 18 months ago and not more. And you can see how well it's since grown. You can take a look. I'll stand up next to it, and my reach is about 8 feet, so it's between 7 and 8 feet tall. It's got all of these flowers, and if you take a look over here, you can even see, for example, over here, it's holding on to some fruit, and I've seen some better clusters of fruit. Take a look down here. You can see over here, there's a group of about 4 baby avocados right there. So here we are now in our second year, and we're gonna hopefully get to enjoy at least a dozen fruit off of this tree. But take a look what's happened underneath. This looks horrible. All of these leaves that have fallen off in just the last 2 weeks. And I've got emails from a lot of you growers saying, you know, our leaves are falling off, what do I do? And you know, do I return the plant? Is it dying? And this is a typical phenomenon. The avocado is a evergreen plant, meaning that it's gonna stay green year round. With the leaf drop, in comparison to the deciduous trees, which are your apple trees and your peach trees and your fig trees and all those other trees, they'll drop their leaves typically in the fall months and just before winter, and then put out a new flush of growth. What the Hass avocado and these other avocado varieties are doing is they're dropping their leaves. Your citrus will do the same thing. Once the leaves are over a year, year and a half old, they'll drop the old leaves, and then they're gonna put out the new leaves, which are the new engines for photosynthesis, which is the process of making the sugars that'll support the root growth, the stem growth, and the fruit yields on the plant. So when it comes to all of these leaves falling down below, we're gonna leave them here because this is the beginning process of returning all of that energy you put into your garden, all of the fertilizers, and we're gonna talk about Epsom salts and calcium and all the things that you put into your garden is now gonna get returned back into the soil. So all of these leaves still have all of the nutrient-rich elements that you put into it to establish this growth, and now all of those leaves are returning back into the soil. If you've got a good healthy soil biology, which includes the earthworms and the nematodes and beneficial bacteria and fungi, it's breaking all of these elements down and going to feed this plant and get it off to even a better start this year than it was last year, and it's just going to continue getting better and better with each progressive year if you're gardening properly. Let's get started. So I'm going to get into the definition of permaculture and some of the concepts and the logic behind it towards the end of this, but let me share with you just a general outline of what we're going to talk about. If you want to come in a little closer, you can read this with me as we've organized this. This is really a part 2 to a video that was released about a month ago. It's called Tomato Care Eggshell Puree, NPK-CA for Calcium, Pest Control, IV Organic Plant Guard, published on March 17, 2017, and there was 49,782 views as of this morning. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about plant care generally, not just tomato care. We're going to talk about eggshell grounds and the importance, and even another better way of getting those grounds into the soil, aside from using a blender. And then we're going to talk about the 6 macronutrients plants must have, and we're going to discuss the importance of feeding your plants and when to feed them, and then, as I said, we're going to talk about permaculture at the end. So let's get started here. And in regards to that video link, I'm going to publish it right here in this upper right hand corner link. You'll find that link to that video if you want to check that out, as this is kind of a build off of that lesson. So the first thing I want to talk about is the nutrients plants need. Plants need 6 macronutrients. These are the nutrients that plants need the most and are important for healthy plant development. Not only are the macronutrients important, it must have the macronutrients and the micronutrients. And if it's missing just one element, your plant won't reach its genetic potential and it won't perform the way you want it to. So it's important to make sure all those elements are in your soil for successful plant health. Let's take a look at a few of these fertilizers that I brought here, and I'm going to discuss the application and the use in just a minute. But this here, for example, is a chemical-based fertilizer. If you take a look here, it has the numbers 646, and when we talk about NPK, your N is your nitrogen, which is your number 6, which means it has 6% nitrogen content in this product, 4% phosphorus, and 6 being your last number is your K, is your potassium, so it's got 6% potassium. But this is chemically made, and if we take a look at the ingredients, and you should be doing this when you buy your products, it says it's derived from polymer-coated urea, ammonium sulfate, diammonium phosphate, sulfate of potash, magnesia, potassium chloride, sodium borate, copper sulfate, copper oxide, ferrous sulfate. So it's got all of these things in here. I'm not going to keep reading it, but if you take a look at the contents, you can see that this is not, let me get out of the sun, but you can see that this is not an organic based fertilizer. This is chemically driven, and you can see that it looks like it's made out of something that would come out of the lab. I'm gonna rinse my hands off real quick and we'll continue. Chemical stuff more so, and even the organic stuff, you should be wearing gloves. Another product is made by Miracle-Gro, and here's a couple, one being an all plant food, another one a rose food. But let's take a look at the contents of this. And you can see here again, we've got a product that's glowing blue, again, chemically based. And over here, let's see the color that they use for this one. You can see here, we've got something that's, you know, a glowing pink, reddish product. Again, chemically based, formulated fertilizers. If we take a look at this again, I'm looking at the percentages. You can take a look on this side, it shows, you can see over here where it says your plant food percentage is 24% nitrogen. Whenever you typically see percentages for any of these NPK fertilizers that are in excess of 5 or 10, especially 10, I would question whether or not it is organic. But again, you got to look at the directions in the back to see where it's derived. But this one here is a 24-8-16, meaning 24% nitrogen, 8% phosphorus, and 16% potassium. Again, a chemical base. Your better choices, and even though we just said, you know, Miracle-Gro has chemically based line fertilizers, they also have organic. You could buy, here's a Miracle-Gro product where it's just got bone meal, and this product specifically has, so this product over here on the back, it says Nature's Care Organic Blood Meal, 6% nitrogen, 8% phosphorus, 0% potassium. So a great source for getting nitrogen and phosphorus into your soil is just using this product, bone meal. Another product line that they make is blood meal, and the blood meal here is got 12% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus, 0% potassium. And let's see where it's derived. I told you we're going to look at the ingredients. Both of them are derived from porcine. This is porcine blood meal, and then the bone meal mixture is made out of porcine bone meal. And porcine is derived from pigs. So from the bones and the blood that exist from the pig slaughterhouse, that's what they're using to make this product. So 12% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus, 0% potassium. I would not personally use just a nitrogen exclusive based fertilizer, even though organic, on your plants, as plants need, again, a spectrum of elements in the soil in order to grow successfully. So we've got that. I'm going to go into some more of these fertilizers in just a second, but let me go to this chart, which was provided by the University of Wisconsin. As you can see over here, it says essential elements for plant growth. These are the macronutrients and the micronutrients, and it says plant concentrations of essential elements may exceed the critical concentrations the minimum concentration requires for growth and may vary somewhat from species to species. Nonetheless, the following table gives a general requirement of plants. And this here it says nitrogen, which is what's needed most by the plant, is in first place with 15,000 milligrams per kilogram. Potassium, second place, and keep in mind potassium is the third number on your fertilizer. In third place, it's calcium. So if I were to create a fertilizer with just 3 elements in there, then I would call it nitrogen, potassium, calcium, because those so far are your top 3 most important elements. So keep that in mind. And actually, if I were to design a fertilizer, I'd make sure it had all 6 macronutrients in there. It's not just 3 macronutrients, it's 6. And I'm going to show a few more studies that support that there's 6 key elements that plants need a lot of in order to succeed. Let's continue with this list. So we got nitrogen, potassium, calcium. Those are your top 3. Then magnesium, and then here comes phosphorus, which is your second number in your NPK numbers. So phosphorus is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the list. And then there's sulfur, and sulfur, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, sulfur makes the macronutrient list, and then the rest of these are considered your micronutrients needed in far less concentration. And those include chlorine, iron, boron, manganese, zinc, copper, molybdenum, and nickel. All of these other micronutrients are necessary for these different chemical reactions that plants carry out in order, for successful, plant production. So another study is by the University of Hawaii at Manoa. If you want to take a look at this with me. So University of Hawaii at Manoa, Soil Nutrient Management for Maui County. And down here it says, the primary nutrients are no more important than the other essential elements, since all essential elements are required for plant growth. Remember that the law of minimum tells us that if deficient, any essential nutrient can become controlling force in crop yield. And this here you can see was taken by www.ctahr.hawaii.edu. So the lesson in that is, if we go back to this chart over here, and here it has 6 macronutrients and all of these micronutrients, a total of, I believe, 13. If one of these is missing, your plant's performance is going to be less than optimal. So again, another reason you're going to want to make sure you've got all of them. If you now use chemical fertilizers in your garden, they're going to make sure that your plants have the NPK, but you're not going to get all of these essential elements that would otherwise be provided by, to your plant by using the organic options, and we're going to discuss those in just a minute. So I'm hoping that these concepts are being understood by those of you that are watching it. So it's called the law of minimum, meaning if one of those elements are missing, then your plant will not reach its optimal performance. Again, using the this Hawaii research, it also further reads, if you want to come in a little closer, it reads the intermediate nutrients are sulfur, magnesium, and calcium, and together the primary and the intermediate nutrients are referred to as the macronutrients. So here's another study that substantiates the importance of those top 6 macronutrients. Lastly, let's quickly summarize the benefits of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur for your plants. And let's just quickly read these so you can see the effects of this. This here was taken, again, the source is Organic Growers School. At the bottom, it's the site is over here. It's called organicgrowersschool.org. And here are the lessons real quick. Nitrogen. So nitrogen makes for healthy green growth and rapid vegetative growth. Too much nitrogen, fewer flowers, poor root growth, succulent foliage that is susceptible. And I highlighted foliage that's susceptible, and I'm going to explain to you why in just a minute. Not enough nitrogen, poor stem and leaf growth, and that's teeny tiny plants, yellowing leaves, general failure to thrive. Phosphorus promotes root growth, promotes flowering, fruit set, and disease resistance, and moves slowly through the plant. Too much results in extensive roots, fewer shoots, and stunned growth. Not enough phosphorus, and it results in poor root growth, fewer flowers and aborted flowers, and no fruit. Potassium promotes overall vigor, fruit, ripening, and disease resistance. Too much results in reduced calcium magnesium uptake, low disease resistance, and scorching of leaves. Not enough potassium, and it results in slow maturity of fruits, scorched leaves, poor root and shoot development, susceptibility to frost, drought, and pest pressures. And then we continue. Magnesium promotes the green leaves, vegetative growth, and sugar formation. Calcium promotes plant structure and strength, new cell walls, growth, and disease resistance. And sulfur promotes fruit and seed maturity and green leaves. Let's continue. Let me explain. So too much nitrogen results in succulent foliage that's susceptible. If you're putting products with 24% nitrogen in your garden, then the plant is gonna give you way too much growth. The plant's not gonna have the disease resistance and the pest resistance to maintain healthy growth, because now you're gonna have to, in addition to your chemical fertilizer, use pesticides to now manage the pest issues within the plant, because the plant is putting out more growth than it otherwise would naturally. And when I talk about naturally, we need to be using organic, such as, and this is one example, there's going to be a dozen over here to my left, but this here you can see has 5% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, 1% potassium. You can get higher in second numbers higher second and third numbers using different products, but a 5% nitrogen will offer the plant a nice slow release of nitrogen, which you'll be applying gradually over time. There's also granular fertilizers that gradually, feed the plant. And what you're ultimately doing with organic fertilizers is you're feeding the soil biology. As we mentioned underneath the avocado plant, we want to make sure that we've got elements available to feed the soil biology, those earthworms, nematodes, beneficial bacteria, and fungi, and those living organisms within the soil will return those elements back into the plant and result in your best, most healthy vegetative growth, fruit production, and so forth. Let's quickly review the different types of fertilizer you're going to find at your store, and then from there talk about a fertilizing schedule and how to apply it. So let's take a look at what I've got over here. Down here, as you can see, we've got our eggshells, and we're going to talk about how to get these calcium-rich elements into your garden. Over here I've got my blender, and over here I've got my coffee grinder, and that coffee grinder concept was actually taught to me by one of you guys that wrote in the comments to that last video. So we're going to test the concept of using the coffee grinder to create eggshell dust, which the goal is to get it as fine as possible so we can get it into the soil and available to the plant immediately. But again, before we talk about that fertilizing schedule, let's see the products that we have here again. Again, we've got this chemically based product by Vigoro. We've got Miracle-Gro, another chemical based product. Then we've got these EPSOM salts. And EPSOM salts, as we now learned, has the following: magnesium, 9.8%, as well as sulfur, 12.9%, and it's derived from magnesium sulfate. And if we open this up and take a look here, it's just these salts. And it is not table salt, and it is not sodium chloride. This is Epsom salt, and as we saw, it's derived from magnesium sulfate, and this has those two macro elements, nutrients that are required for healthy plant growth. So this should be part of your fertilizing schedules to make sure you got magnesium and sulfur in your soil. Another product that's organic, as you can see here, is 888, made by Purely Organics. And on the back, let's see where this is derived from. You can see that it's derived from, living sources: soybean meal, feather meals, dicalcium phosphate, blood meal, corn gluten meal, and potassium chloride. So again, organic based. Another one, Espoma, and let's take a look at the percentages here. You can see that it's a 3-4-4, so fairly balanced fertilizer. 3% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus, 4% potassium, and it's derived from hydrolyzed feather meal, pasteurized poultry manure, bone meal, alfalfa meal, green sand, humate, sulfate of potash, and magnesia. Other products that we have here, made by G&B Organics, is this organic high bloom fertilizer, a 131, and again, it also says right up in here. Trying to get some light. It says fish and kelp with molasses. So again, you can see it's derived from organic sources. You should still turn it around. Then we can see it's derived from. It says fish soluble, stabilized with phosphoric acid, reduced sugar, molasses, sulfate of potash, and kelp extract. Another product, fish fertilizer, made by Alaska, and over here derived from fish solubles. Another product over here, Organic Plus, made by Kellogg, fish and kelp fertilizer. On the back side, 222. 2% nitrogen, 2% phosphorus, 2% potassium, derived from reduced sugar molasses, fish solubles, stabilized with phosphoric acid, kelp extract, and sulfate of potash. Let's see a couple more real quick. Organic Neptune's Harvest Fish and Seaweed Fertilizer, 231, 2% nitrogen, 3% phosphorus, 1% potassium. And the last one, another organic option, made Organic Plus by Kellogg's, is vegetable and fruit fertilizer. And the percentages on here are 402. And again, I don't like zeros unless I'm going to be mixing it with other products, but 4% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus, 2% potassium. And again, derived from reduced sugar molasses and acidulated fish soluble. So you can see it's pretty consistent in regards to the source of where these products are coming from. And even though they don't talk necessarily about anything outside of the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, being that they're organic, they're going to have all these other elements within it. Another example I explained in another video, which I'll put the link again right up here in the corner, talks about using fish fertilizer, using actual fish leftovers, or if you go fishing and you've got extra fish parts, how to get those into your soil and benefit the value of having fish in your garden. This here is the periodic table of elements. You don't need to zoom in over here, but there's a total of 118 elements. Introducing a fish into your garden has almost half of the elements of your periodic table, which will be going into your soil. So another great way of getting a lot of elements into your soil. And now let's talk about a feeding schedule. So a lot of you ask, when do you feed your plants? Winter, spring, summer, fall? When? How much? Why? Is it every month? Is it every week? Is it once a season? When and how do I do this? And I'm going to share with you a few of my gardening tips. And before I begin, I want to share this lesson that I learned from a professional grower that I met with earlier this year that compared the feeding cycle of the plant to a 24-hour day for a person. The plant cycle you can see as being an entire year, and let's analogize that 1 year of the plant to just being 24-hour day for us. Starting with this, when you wake up in the morning, you start off with a breakfast, and your breakfast should be a moderate to light breakfast. Your lunch should be your main meal of the day according to a lot of research. And then for dinner, to have another light, sensible meal, and then you go to bed and you take a break. You know, at night you're not, I know there's some people that like their midnight snacks, but for the most of us, you're sleeping those 8 to 12 hours or 7 hours or 6 hours, whatever it is that you do. But those sleeping hours are your winter months if you were to translate the human 24 hours to, or the animal 24 hours to the plant's year. Those hours that you're sleeping, you do not eat, you do not have an espresso, you do not, you don't do anything to the plant. You leave it alone those winter months. When the plant exits, that last chance of frost in your area is a wonderful time. Even if for us here in Southern California, our last chance of frost is at the end of January. So starting February first week is a wonderful time to start feeding your plant, and again, moderately, to get all of those nutrients and elements back into the soil that may have otherwise washed away with all of the winter rains, and especially after the last season, which was a record 10-year rainy season that we had here in Southern California. So it's important to start off enriching the soil with a lot of organic material. So by adding all of those organic materials back into the soil, you are now waking up the microbial life that's in your soil, which includes the earthworms, the beneficial bacteria, the nematodes, and the beneficial fungi, among hundreds and thousands of other biology that exists in the soil. So again, doing things organically will wake these things up. It'll also warm up the soil temperatures, as you've got these living organisms in the soil that are, you know, increasing and warming up the soil temperatures, whereas a chemical fertilizer will not do that for your plants. So another important reason, you know, to be growing organically. So breakfast is your fertilizing in the spring. Your lunch is summertime. Your plant's metabolism is peaking. There's more hours of light during the summer months than there are the rest of the year. The temperatures are warmer, the plant is growing, the plant is supporting fruit, the plant is doing so many more things in the middle of summer than it is the rest of the year. An important reason to make sure that if you're following your fertilizer instructions, that you're giving your plant all that you can, whereas in both spring as well as in the fall, you might cut back on the recommended doses for that particular reason. And then back in the fall, as I just said, you're going to want to cut back on the fertilizer and make sure that you've got at least a couple of months before you get into those, you know, cold and approaching freezing temperatures, depending on where you live in the country, to make sure that those elements are sufficiently broken down by the soil biology and returning those back into the soil for the plant to absorb and use throughout the winter months. But keep in mind that the plant does go to sleep during the winter, even if it's supporting fruit like citrus here in California, or your camellias that are in full bloom in the middle of winter. Your plants need a lot less nutrition, and there are things you can do such as foliar sprays and nutritional sprays, which I've done videos on as well, and I'll put those links down below. But the plants need a lot less care in the winter than they otherwise would come spring, summer, and fall. With that being said, let me talk about some of the things that I would do for my trees, and we'll use this here as my example. Let's check out some of these products over here. You may want to consider starting your season with a liquid fertilizer. These liquid fertilizers in general, we're not going to turn these over and read them individually, but what a liquid fertilizer will do is it will quickly get these elements into the soil and available to the soil biology. Whereas a granular fertilizer such as Espoma, another one is Dr. Earth, a couple of these Miracle Grow products that are also organic. You can even add some Epsom salts and this. But what I would do again is I usually typically start off with a liquid feed, wait a couple of weeks, and then start adding a few handfuls of granular fertilizer, which is going to break down over the next 2 to 3 months, and I would scatter that around the plant. Whatever the recommended dosage is, I usually cut that back to almost 50%, and instead of feeding my plants once every 3 months, what I'm looking for, and the reason I am timing this for those that are subscribed, you're going to get this the first week of May, and this is like a really important time to make sure that you've got a lot of these nutrients in your soil, but don't do them all at the same time. Pace yourself out at least a few weeks apart, and ideally I space myself to the first week of every single month. I'm looking at my plants and I'm deciding, should I put some more nitrogen, a product that's got more nitrogen in it, a product that needs more phosphorus, a product that needs more potassium, a balanced fertilizer, some Epsom salts, should I do a liquid feed? But I'll only do one thing. I won't do everything throughout the entire month. I just want to visit my garden once a month when it comes to enriching it and with one of these fertilizers, and that's it. I'm not going to keep on adding and adding and adding several times a month, every month throughout the entire growing season. So just once a month, even if it's a liquid feed and it says it's only going to feed your plants for the next 2 weeks, no big deal. There should be other good things happening in the garden. For example, and let me share with you over here. So here we are now between our Fuerte avocado tree and our Haas avocado tree, and you may notice that there's these piles of cuttings that we've taken around the garden. I think this here is a piece off the banana. I think this here is in fact a banana peel maybe. And then there's leaves and stems, and here's some avocado leaves from maybe some cuttings that were taken earlier. And as you go down in the layers, it's going to break down more and more fine, whereas at the bottom it's going to have these elements that are just going right back into the soil. These piles at night, I usually wet them, and it attracts more slugs that come in and start eating it and break it down into its elements faster. The earthworms are coming from below, and these piles melt pretty fast during the summer months, but I'll be adding obviously to it as we continue cutting. So we've got these piles over here. We're right in between our lime tree and our Fuerte avocado tree. You can see that all of these leaves have fallen on the floor below. And we talked about the importance of these leaves as well. So my point is, if I do not feed my plant one particular month, or if I'm not feeding my plant enough one particular month, the fact that I'm doing things organically and these leaves are falling to the soil and they're being watered and returning these elements back into the soil, you're still feeding your plant even though you're not putting products back into your soil. And this leads me to one of my last concepts, is called permaculture. Let's talk about the definition of that. Follow me. Are you on this?
Yeah.
So permaculture is defined as the development of agricultural ecosystems intended to be sustainable and self-sufficient. Another helpful article I found was by www.tropicalpermaculture.com, and he talks about what is permaculture and a lot of the theories behind it. But let's talk about that over here. So permaculture, again, just looking at the definition, a development of agricultural systems intended to be sustainable and self-sufficient. It's my goal to eventually get rid of all of these fertilizers. And take a look again. I mean, this is a lot of products that I've accumulated and I found in my garage to share with you. And I'm still using quite a bit of these. And considering that most of the trees in this garden are under 3 years old, the goal is to get them to reach their maturity as soon as possible so that we can enjoy bountiful yields of fruit and vegetables and all the good things that come with making sure that all these elements are in the soil. But instead of feeding your plants every single month, how wonderful would it be if the plant can sustain itself all by itself? And that's the concept behind permaculture. Eventually we're going to get to the point that these avocado trees will be large enough and the citrus will be large enough that they'll be dropping their own leaves, and the leaves alone will provide the nutrients necessary to the plants. You can maybe add some supplements here and there. You can add some trace elements that you think might be lacking in the soil, but you won't need to be dumping even the organic fertilizers into your garden on a regular basis. And you can start using a lot of the cuttings from your plants, that, whether they be citrus, and composting those and using them to feed your vegetables, such as your squash and tomatoes. And the benefits just go on and on. There's so much you can accomplish within the confines of your garden, as well as your kitchen, as we have here with our eggshells that we're going to be talking about later, and the benefits of bringing your eggshells into your garden. So you can use your kitchen scraps, whether they be the peels from your oranges that you eat, or the eggshells that we have over here, or and a lot of the vegetable scraps that you have in preparing your meal. All of that can go back into your compost pile and be used to fertilize your plants and get all of those elements from the periodic table into your garden. So now let's talk about the importance of getting calcium into your soil. And as we saw off the list, calcium is number 3 according to the University of Wisconsin in regards to important macronutrients that your plants need for a healthy, optimal health. So our goal is to get these eggshells into the garden. And if we were just to take an eggshell like so and crush it and put it next to our tree, it's going to break down very slowly. And that's the importance of grinding it and getting into as many small particles as possible. And to accomplish this, I suggested a month ago in this last video to basically take your eggshells, and you can throw whatever quantity you want in there. But when it comes to numbers also, and a few of you asked, specifically because I did it with my tomatoes, I said, how many eggshells would you put? And we just talked about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Your plants are waking up in the spring. Add, like on a tomato plant, the equivalent of about maybe 2 eggshells per plant in the spring, and another 2 eggshells in the summer, and that's it for the year. By the time it's fall, most of your yields of tomatoes are already going to be coming off, and again, a lot of these elements are going to be recycled back into the soil. And with all of the other things you're doing in regards to supplements, have calcium in it too. So this is just another added plus, in addition to the stems and leaves and all these other things that are in your compost pile that also have calcium in it. We just want to get a little bit more to specifically prevent end blossom rot in your tomatoes. But again, all your plants can benefit. Again, I'm looking at some basil here in front of me, my passion fruit that's behind me. I got some mint over here. Everything can benefit from having calcium. So now we've got these eggshells that are here in the blender, and what we're going to do is just blend it. So if you take a look here, we've now got some eggshell puree in there. I mean, these shells are very finely crushed, and now we can use this to water around the base of this avocado, for instance. So we put 2 eggshells, and there we go. And if you zoom in a little closer, you can see how fine these eggshells are right there at the tip of my finger. You can see there's like millions of pieces of eggshell right there, but I've done the same all the way around the plant. Now let's look at an alternative to using this puree. If the goal is to do things dry and to actually have a lot of eggshell powder available that you can just store in a coffee can or whatever else, you can use a device like this. And this is just a coffee grinder. I found it at Bed Bath for just under $20. I think it was like $18 or $19. And you can see, it's just got these simple 2 blades in here. And what we're going to do is, and if you want to come a little closer, you can see how this is, how this can work. And again, this is my first time doing it, so we're doing this live for the first time. We can just throw a couple of eggshells like so. I got a better idea on how we can fit some more, but let's just start off with 2. And let's get started. Here we go. We're going to press the button. Okay, so it looks like the eggs are, there it goes, there it goes. I told you I had a better way to make sure that these get ground faster and I can do more of them, but anyways, that's enough for now. I got a better system, and that's gonna be this. We're gonna combine this concept with taking our plastic bag method, which this is how some growers will actually get their eggshells, pretty small, is just taking a bag. And watch, I can fit now, this is now 3, 4, 5, 6, let's do 6 eggs on this one. we'll seal it and now just grind it like so. And we'll add that to the coffee grinder. And now let's see how this works. And let's go. I'm loving this. What a great idea. Okay, here we go. Look at that dust that's coming out of there. All that dust is ready available calcium to the plants. I'll dump this back in the bag so you can see how fine this is. But check this out. Now we got eggshell dust ready and available to the plants. We can now sprinkle this around another plant. Let's check this out. Follow me. So here we are now under our Haas avocado. We can now just take a handful of these eggshells and just sprinkle it like so around the plant. For it to be most effective to the plant, it's important to also take. So we just added about eight eggshells around this plant, and this might be the one and only time that I do this to this specific avocado plant. Even though we talked about with the tomatoes, you can do a couple in the spring and a couple in the summer. That's specifically to treat end blossom rot. But for my avocado, this should be sufficient in addition to all the other things that we're doing for the plant. But now I'm going to take also my granular fertilizer here and just scatter a little bit around the plant as well. I want you guys to read your directions and make sure you're applying the right amount. I kind of can eyeball this, and again, I'm feeding my plants once a month. This is my feeding for the first week of May. And then I'm just going to take, my shovel. I've just got, a couple tips over here. I'm in my hand tool, and I'm just going to mix that into like the top quarter inch of the soil to get it down and off the leaves and into the lower level of the soil. And that's it. The next most important thing is to water it. By watering it, we're going to activate these chemicals and get the elements into the soil. So make sure once you fertilize it, you water your plants thoroughly. Let's continue. One other tip I want to share with you before I talk about mulch, which will be the final topic, is the elements that you can find in your eggs. This year is an article I got from, and again, I'm giving credit to all these different people that publish these pretty cool articles, is lifescience.com. And on lifescience.com, you'll find an article which talks about that the reason that eggs have so much calcium in it is because of calcium carbonate. It's specifically that compound that's in the eggshell, and the elements from the compound will break down into the soil and offer the plants the calcium from what's called calcium carbonate, which is what makes the eggshell. But in addition to the eggshell, a lot of you viewers have been asking, should I soak it in water first? Should I boil it to get more elements out of it? And the theory and the logic behind all of this is the albumin, which is the white part within the egg. There's the yolk, which is the center yellow part, and then the white part is called albumin. But the albumin has more elements that are important for plant health, and those include vitamins, some vitamins, B3, B2, but specifically plants need chlorine, magnesium, potassium, and sulfur, and these were published by the Iowa Egg Council. So there's some more micronutrients that the plants need that are also in the egg albumin. I wouldn't just use egg albumin in your soil, but the trace amounts and what little come off the eggshell, in addition to, whether you do the puree or the coffee grinds, the albumin that's on the inner lining is offering the plants additional trace elements which are important for plant health as well. So again, the benefits just continue going on and on and on as long as you're doing things organically. So the last topic I want to talk about is the importance of mulching your plants. And there's an article I got from the University of California, and this year is published by, I'll share it with you so in case you want to research it and go into further depth, University of California Agricultural and Natural Resources. The website is off of ipm.acanr.edu, and what they talk about is PHYTOPHTHORA root rot, and phyto means plant, and tophthora is Greek for destroyer. So this is something that destroys your plant from the roots. So this PHYTOPHTHORA pest is more algae and less fungal, but it thrives in moist conditions, and it's typically plagued on over 1,000 different hosts, and these include your fruit trees, your avocado trees, a lot of your fruits and vegetables can all be affected when there isn't good drainage. When there's a lot of water around the roots, that is a perfect breeding ground for Phytophthora to breed and continue to thrive. So to prevent it, mulching can aid in minimizing the amount of these pathogens within your soil by introducing more beneficial microbes in the soil that'll be competing for the area and offering more benefits to the plant than the negative things that may exist within your soil. So what we're going to do here to the avocado is we're going to take So what we're going to do here with the avocado is we're going to take this bucket of wood chips, which I've gathered from other parts in the garden, and we're going to scatter it like so around the plant. I'm going to get some more to create about at least a 2 to 3, possibly 4-inch layer of wood chips. But you're going to want to make sure that you keep a distance, at least a couple of inches to 4 inches away from the tree trunk. So you'll notice as you come in a little closer, I'm going to make sure that these wood chips do not come in contact with the tree trunk, as the tree trunk is also, just like our skin, made of dead cells. The tree trunk's also made of dead cells, and if there's any insects, wood-boring insects that are in the wood, those can actually then travel into the bark of the plant and possibly cause damage to the living part of the avocado. So you're going to want to make sure you keep your wood chips away from your plant, and again, create a nice area around what would be the root zone with a nice 2 to 4 inch layer of wood chips. And again, be careful not to come too close in contact with the trunk of the plant. We've covered so much information. I hope it was useful and beneficial, and gonna help you off to a wonderful start in making this your best growing season ever. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, and most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to all these other educational gardening videos by Ivory Organics. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.